So let me start with our first presenter here, who is Mr. Martin Brechbiel, MMR. Martin, welcome.
So we were building one of these things, a winch car. Just to remind you, that's where we're headed, in that direction. And that's about as far as we got 2 weeks ago. We've got a structure on a flat car with some rails and a roof and a place to put the winch that we built. So now it's just a matter of putting all the rest of this together. There's a lot of the rest, so we'll go sort of quickly or not so quickly. First thing we need to do, we need to have something to hold the rails down in place other than just glue. So you've got these pieces of wire that wrap squarely around the rail, through the decking, around the outside of the car, and underneath are bound together by a piece of brass. I didn't solder these together. I wimped out and just glued them in place. But so you have to bend all these pieces so they just barely clear the rail, wrap around, drill a hole through the decking, missing the side sill, and then underneath you have this little piece of brass with 2 holes drilled through it. So this is a lot of fun. You have to fabricate all these pieces of wire, pop them through the hole in the deck, and then pop the 2 pieces of wire through the 2 holes in the little tiny piece of brass. And you only have 2 hands to do this all. So it's a bit of a manipulative challenge, and can provoke some colorful language at times, particularly after you get it on there and you reach for a little drop of glue and it goes flying off into space and you have to make a new one. We won't talk about how many times that might have happened, but it's together and it's holding nicely. Now you can see I don't have the brake system installed yet. All we have in there is the train line and the truss rod system, not up on the queen post yet. So we need these pieces. These are what the winch cable runs through over the top. There's a little A-frame in brass. I made these out of H structures. I had some in a tube, so you could use solid brass or styrene, box girder or box shaped stuff. But I used the brass because I thought I'm going to set myself up for failure here as best I can and hold this all together. So this is a lot of cutting with the Dremel, clamping it into place. Clamping these pieces are actually what really holds it together when you assemble it. This is about 20 thousandths brass, 2 pieces, and you build one, clamp it all together, get it soldered, use that one as a template for the other one. You can probably make 2 that are close enough together that they'll match adequately. If you had to make 20 of them, you're never going to make 20 identically. But 2 you can probably make. Even if you set up a jig and set it aside, you'll probably mess it up at least 1 out of 3 times. I got close enough. These are just the little feet on the end of it are just 15 or 10 thousandths scrap brass, a piece of 33 thousandths brass wire across here for stabilizing it. And I got 2 made. It's all held together. I can grind off a little bit of the excess solder, clean it up, Q-tip and some lacquer thinner. And that dot there is important because there's where the pole goes that connects the 2 together. So now that I have it assembled, we go for the big moment and see if I can ruin it by running a drill through it on the drill press and pop a hole through it, and do that on the other one and get it lined up about as close as I can. And apparently I did okay. That's a piece of 47 thousandths brass tubing, brass rod. And on the end, there's a pair of holding it together. These are actually 080 or 0100 hex nuts. They're all soldered together. Guy wires of 25 thousandths brass wire, crisscrossing. It's pretty stable. Be careful with, because I'm using a torch, not a soldering iron. This is a Grant Line plastic part. So you have to be a little careful where you aim your torch when you do that. And you have a piece of plastic in the field of fire. So it's a little bit of caution, a lot of clamps and stuff set up, and make sure, okay, I can come in safely from this end, from this angle with the torch, touch it quick, get some solder on it, and get the heck out of the way before I hit the plastic and melt the thing that I can't get back off after I've melted it. So you want to avoid that, but it can be done. And you can see in that picture, you see that these are H beams as opposed to a square box. But you can use square box. I just happen to have this, and I thought it looked better, looked more interesting. You test fit it where it goes on a car, and strangely enough, it actually fits. I almost measured it close enough to make it fit in between the rails. So it's got a little room there, but that's okay. Better that it's a little small, a little tighter, a little narrower than a little too wide. You have to force it in or grind off some of the brass, some of the brass feet. Okay, so we'll move on to finishing the car. This is just stained with Minwax, top, bottom, all around. I've added the air hose on the castings on the ends, but it's just Minwax. And I've added the entire underbody now, and given it a touch over with probably locomotive black. I have a bottle of poly scale that I've been trying to kill. So every now and then I pull it out and scrape the bottle with a brush and touch things up with that as best I can. Okay, we'll start putting stuff on the car. We'll put our winch that we built 2 weeks ago back in here, a pair of forceps and some glue, and it's in place. Hit it with a lot of oily black. I have a bottle of polyscale oily black that is congealing, but I throw in some water, stir it up hard with a stick, and then it makes good weathering material, and it's actually got a lot of oily black on it. Got a water bag here, a toolbox, and there's a pick, a barrel, got some hammers in it. You can never have too many hammers. A bucket over here with some grease in it. Here's the cable that I'd left long. It actually is out here, wraps around this. We'll come back to this. There's a hook on the other end. It's just hooked on the back wire, so we know where we put the hook. It's not laying around. This is a little guide gadget that runs this cable. Cable runs right through this, and it's keeping it in the center of the car. This is made out of a pair of two halves of a piece of brass tubing that I just cut in half with a Dremel and soldered upright to a piece of scrap brass. There's a nut bolt washer on each side of it and a little bit of glue holding it in place. So it's a rounded guide system. You can see it better in this picture, the shape of it being half rounds here. And that just keeps the cable from wandering back and forth and all over the place when you're cranking things up onto the body of the car. And a little more weathering and what have you, just scraps of paint in old bottles. And I've painted the structure end of the car. I've forgotten what color yellow it is. It might be Erie Lackawanna yellow that I just kind of liked the color at the time. And it's just dry brushed on the entire car. It's not actually painted. It's a light dry brushing. And I thought, there's got to be some way to power the electric winch. And I thought, well, I model trolleys occasionally when when nobody's watching. And a cable with a hook on the end of it gets thrown up over the cable wire, trolley wire, and now we have power for our winch right back down through the car. surprise. And just the standard Panera napkin roofing with dark lark gray paint. There's a better picture of the paint job. It's kind of rough, which is just the way I wanted it. And when in doubt, you have to add a figure, a warm body, or in this case, a pewter body, which is not all that warm, but he's here anyhow with his oil can, just in case something untoward happens and he has to run up and adjust things. You can see I've added, the brake systems over here, brake shaft, ratchet and pawl, stirrup. Everything's been painted up, and the truss rod system's back up on the queen post. This car is about 99% done, if not another 44 100ths. And another scene from the top. You can see the little trolley pole aperture for the cable and a little brass hook with a cable attached to it. And that's where we're at. We're done with that car in 2 sessions. Quick and easy. And if there's questions, now's the time to scream them out.
That's a good looking car, Martin.
Thank you, Jim.
Anybody have any questions for Martin?
Martin, when you paint those metal pieces, do you prime them or just paint them?
I just paint them.
What kind of paint are you using these days?
Mainly polyscale.
Okay.
But every now and then a bottle of Floquil will sneak in if I don't have the right colors. It's whatever is available on the shelf today.
Yeah.
I try not to buy too much paint.
Anybody else?
Well, thank you for the comments.
Thanks
from
so much.
Chat.
We appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
All righty.